All right, today we got a special guest. We got my dear friend, Mitch Langlois. He works at Aerotek in recruiting, also known as headhunting. Thank you for joining us today, Mr. Jean-Michel.
Thanks
Mitch.
for having me, man.
I'm going to put my radio voice on the whole time.
Yeah, perfect.
But no, it's good. Thanks for coming by. It's snowing outside. We're here in Montreal.
Yeah.
This is the first time you've ever done a podcast?
First time, man.
Yeah, you excited?
Excited. I wasn't sure, like, how, what the mic voice would look like or whatnot, but I think it'll be good.
I think you're going to do great.
Yeah.
Are you nervous?
I'm a little nervous. Yeah, for sure. I don't want to mess up your reputation, Yeah, I got some big shoes to fill. Your past guests were pretty good,
Well, you know what? I'm very confident that you're going to do a great job today. Some people, it's interesting. It's like it always takes, especially if it's the first time doing a podcast, it takes a bit of time. It takes about 5, 10. Some people it's a little longer, 15, 20 minutes, half an hour to kind of get comfortable. And then you're like, okay. And then it's actually just a conversation. The conversation starts to flow. Yeah. But it was like the same thing for me when I had my buddy Patrick McGuigan on of 4th Avenue Imports. And I was also nervous for about 5 minutes. And then I wasn't nervous anymore.
I guess you forget about the mic in a couple minutes.
Yeah, you just kind of stop caring. I think is this our 10th episode? 11th episode?
Yeah.
Damn. Yeah. So,
wow.
Fun fact, some guy I heard on a podcast, he has his own podcast, he was throwing out some stats. So there's like 2.4 million or 5 million. There's different numbers, but there's millions and millions and millions of podcasts. And he basically said, if you get, because a lot of podcasts that out of that 5 million, they'll have like 2 or 3 episodes and then they'll never do it again because they realize how much work goes into it. So he basically, short story, said if you get to 10 episodes and you do one a week, you're in the top 5% of podcasts.
Wow.
So we can officially say, welcome to the Freemium Podcast. We're in the top 5% of all podcasts in the world.
Wow.
And I'm very excited to get this conversation going.
I love it, man.
So, do you want me to call you Mitch or Jean-Michel?
Doesn't matter. Mitch is fine, dude. It's going to be weird if you call me.
I've called you Mitch my whole life. So I'll probably call you Mitch. Just go with that.
Yeah. Yeah.
So tell us about yourself.
Yeah. So I work for a company called Aerotek. I oversee a section of our sales force. Our goal is yes, we're in talent acquisition. Our main reason for existing is that. However, our biggest goal is to partner with clients that we have on how to acquire talent or how to get work done, especially in a climate like we have currently.
What do you mean by get work done?
So in terms of operational workforce, like maybe do you have a talent acquisition problem or do you have a getting work done problem?
Got it. Like an operational problem, I guess you could say.
Well, yes, but also, sometimes you land a big project and you need people to get the work done now, but when the project's over, you won't need those people there, or you won't need that kind of workforce anymore. So
got it.
So what we'll do is we'll partner with a company, and yes, we can help in terms of just basic transactional talent acquisition, but our biggest opportunity is to partner up and help them understand the market. How is it looking? What can they do to get exactly more work come into their company, and how to get that done? So that's the biggest part of our work.
Like how to get more jobs, as an example, or stuff like that.
Well, just a lot of companies are turning down contracts because they just can't get it done.
They don't have the manpower.
Too much work. They have too much, and so you're hearing supply chain breaks across the economy, and so because they're not capable of meeting the demand.
And typically speaking, so Aerotek, it's a big company. I did a little bit of research. You guys are global, I think. And can you just explain Aerotek first, because it's owned by a parent company?
That's right.
Right. Okay.
We're an Allegis Group company.
Yeah.
It's privately held. It's actually the headquarters are based out of Baltimore.
Okay.
And fun fact, same owner of the Baltimore Ravens.
Really?
Yeah.
Cool. Interesting.
Yeah. So they started in a garage about 40 years or so ago, and mainly in engineering at the beginning. And then after that, they started expanding to different markets. For myself, we operate in the industrial space. So Aerotek historically used to be the umbrella for all skill sets, but recently we've just broken up into 3 divisional operating companies.
Okay.
So we've got Actilent, which is in engineering. We've got Aston Carter, which is finance and accounting. And then Aerotek remained with the name, and we're in the industrial space.
Industrial space. So you're basically trying to find employees for people in the, you mentioned this the other day, in the manufacturing sector, for example, distribution as well, or it's generally speaking,
we
distribution
do,
as well?
Listen, we call it what we call light industrial, so entry level, whether a warehouse clerk or an assembly clerk, things like that. We can do those skill sets all the way up to skilled trades and even management if needed, but within that sector.
Got it.
We also segment even more. So we say a lot, get smaller to get bigger, just so that we can remain specialized, but still keep growing.
And interesting. And typically speaking, the size of the companies that you're working with are how many employees? Basically, generally speaking.
Oh, it varies. It could be.
It's a big range.
Yeah. It's a huge range. We have. Listen, we will prioritize less clients with more needs. I would say. There's a certain limit to how many people you can service in general. So we were very careful with who we work with, but it doesn't really matter the size. It's not something that we take in consideration. It's not a criteria. Yes, of course, volume is something we look for, but it's not necessary. There's a lot of criteria that we use to select clients, and it's not just size. It could be willing to partner up, like just in terms of flexibility. Are they willing to buy into what we're saying? Will they take our advice? Some clients are very strict with what they want from us, and it's transactional, and we don't do very well in that scenario.
Interesting. That's very interesting. I didn't know that. Like, I always knew that you did headhunting, but so it's basically, and I don't want to kind of, it's a little bit insensitive, I'm going to say it like this, but you basically will rent. So let's say I'm an employer, I'm a company, and I have a project that's going to take 6 months, and I need, let's say I have 100 people in my factory, and I'm going to need an extra 20 to get this project done. I would go to Mitch.
Yeah.
I could rent someone. This sounds terrible. But I could basically go, well, we'll call it a short-term contract.
Yeah.
And have them come in as a contractor for whatever amount it takes to complete the project. And then it would be done. They would no longer be paid by my company, and they would go. So are these people an employee of Aerotek, or are they?
There's many ways of us we can do different things. So we can do direct placements, what we call them. So direct placements would be that they're directly on our client's books once we find the person.
Okay.
And then what we would do is have an honorary charge. It would be just a straight fee that you would pay, and you would have, that would be the way that we work. The other way is, like you said, leasing employees, of course, but they're on our books. They're on Aerotek's payroll. So they would go and work for you, and they're at they're under your supervision, for example. But any type of, if there's an accident, for example, at work, Aerotek would be liable for that. It wouldn't be the client itself.
Interesting.
But there are employees most of the time.
Huh.
Yeah.
I did not know that.
The benefits, what's beneficial is that, after a certain amount of time of work on your grounds, you're allowed to transfer them with no fee.
Okay.
So let's say after 6 months of contract, you're allowed to transfer them over to your books for free. And what this does is
if you like them and they get along,
and
fits the culture, like you, stuff like that. Yeah.
And it gives first of all, the employee a good amount of time to see if this is something he likes. Yeah. And then also the employer takes time to see if someone's good.
Of course.
Within the first 3 months is where you see turnover.
Of course.
So
of course,
it gives you an idea. You can pass through that milestone and make a decision that you guys are both interested, and then it's easier. But a lot of the times it's just because you're not sure what's coming next as a company. So that's why they'll use those services, is that there's a lot of clients that operate.
It's a very flexible service.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. And in a world like we live now, it's a lot easier to, go and get some help if you need it short term. If you're project based, for example, it's difficult for you to, you'll have a core team and always keep those people busy. But if you get a big contract that gets signed, you don't have many ways of going about it, Because after that, if you don't need the people, you're liable for a mass layoff or whatnot. So it's not ideal, you know?
That's very, very, very interesting. Because there are look, there's pros and cons like in anything else, but there's pros and cons to having people as employees. There's more of a cost. There's a lot of people don't, especially in Quebec, Ontario as well, and all of Canada, there's a payroll tax that employers have to pay. There's a group benefits a lot of times that you're paying. There's all these overhead costs. So a lot of people don't know this. So for example, if I'm paying someone, easy round number, $100,000 a year, it's costing KBD Insurance more than $100,000 a year to pay this person.
Yeah.
Tack on about another 20% because we got the group benefits and the payroll tax, stuff like that. Very interesting.
Yeah.
What you're seeing right now, because you keep hearing the words, man, it's a tight job market. Man, I can't find anyone. I can't find good employees. I can't complaining. It's really tough out there. I can definitely speak for my industry, and I would definitely agree with that. There's definitely in my industry right now, I guess you could say, a labor shortage. Yeah. Salaries have definitely gone up. What are you seeing right now in the labor market in Quebec? Quebec's your focus, so we'll focus on this. What are you seeing right now?
So it's funny. It kind of started before COVID. You know, I think a lot of people blame it on COVID, but it's really not where it started. We saw some of these issues way before COVID started around shortage of labor and especially in the industrial space, because that's where I operate the most, but that's where we lack most of the workforce, you know. I mean, it's not.
Is that because, are you lacking a workforce in the industrial sector because the jobs are being automated away? Do you think that's why? So there's less of a demand from the employer side, or is this just because it's difficult?
Well, there is an automation process happening, and that's combating part of the lack of labor. And I mean, I would argue to say that if we weren't making any traction in the automation space, we would be in a much more difficult space currently in the industrial space. No. On the contrary, even if you do automate, you need people to operate those machines.
Yes.
You need people to. So you need to level up your workforce. You need to upskill, we say.
Yeah.
And so maybe you need less, but you'll need more specialized workforce, which even in that space becomes competitive and difficult, and et cetera, et cetera.
So instead of hiring the guy that's stocking the shelves, you're hiring the computer engineer who's working on the machines, fixing the machines to make sure they're doing the job properly.
Yeah, exactly.
Okay.
Well, they've got all these new automated distribution centers, for example, like the new one on the 40 that just came out, the Voila warehouse.
I don't know about that. What's that? Oh, Voila for IGA.
Yes.
Is that all? Is that automated?
It's fully automated.
Really?
Yeah, so I've never been in there, but pretty much what I've heard.
So IGA, the grocery store.
Yeah, they're automated.
I know exactly what you're talking about. Yeah,
exactly. So it's just automated. Like for example, Amazon.
Yeah.
The Amazon, there are robots that go and pick the orders. Historically, it was
people,
order pickers, you know, that would go and pick the orders, and now it's just somebody controlling the robot that will go pretty quick, much quicker than we could, to go and get what you need.
And so, and you said, okay, so you guys are working with this. Can you just describe or explain that a little bit more? You just mentioned that you're working a lot with this in this automation space. What are you guys doing?
The segment
exactly?
that I'm in is manufacturing, robotics, and automation. So I work with companies that are aligning with that segment. So
got it.
For example, we have a distribution warehousing segment. That would be different. Like, for example, if we're working with a warehouse or a 3PL, a third-party logistics, that wouldn't be our space. Our space would be anything that's fabricating.
Okay.
So or automating. So even if it's a company that installs conveyor belt systems at a client, that would be a company I would work with, for example.
Got it. And
in that space, for example, the contract is interesting because currently what they do, if they land a deal, there's the manufacturer of a conveyor system, but then they've got to install it at the client site. Sometimes it's not even in the same country. So what do? Well, they'll maybe subcontract the work. Well, rather than doing that, they can use a company like us, and we'll create the team, we'll run the team, and we'll make sure that the work gets done correctly at a lower cost, just because we have less operating costs. We're the headhunters. We're finding the people directly for said subcontractor anyways.
So I guess like a better explanation of what Aerotek, and I would imagine that a lot of other headhunters do this as well. You guys will help employers, you'll help companies find permanent employees, but you will also help them if they have one-off projects here and there and they need that flexibility. You can also help them with that from a logistics perspective as well.
Well, the way we look at it really is we don't want to put one, like this is what we do. What we'll like to do is we would like to partner with you on talent acquisition as a whole in general. And then there's the other section that I talked about that's important is how to get work done. So, and I know that that's vague, but it's just that's the way that we approach it is, are you currently having issues with getting work accomplished? And then that opens different conversations because we have the retail, we call it, like yes, we need 30 people, and so we'll find 30 people, but there's also the service space where if I were to just say how many people are you looking to hire, we would never get to that service space conversation of, well, listen, we're turning around contracts currently because we're 20 short on the floor anyways.
I can't take the job.
So in my mind, I'd say, okay, no problem. We can take care of your 20 people, but we can also put together a team and help you deliver on your next project if you'd like. So it's just a bigger way of partnering with the client and enabling them to get more contracts, more work, more productivity. Because it is a tough market currently. It is difficult.
Yeah, and I was just about to circle back to that, and you just brought it up. So the tough market right now, because we keep hearing labor shortage. I'm gonna pull up some stats I got right now. So I did my
full employment.
Did my homework. Yeah, very, very, very high. So right now, for those of you that don't know, here's some fun facts. We got the Quebec unemployment rate. 3.9%, very low.
Very low.
So my logic was, maybe the labor rate participation is going to be a little bit lower as well. Labor rate participation is so out of the people who are eligible to work in the, or who are eligible to work basically, and who are still actively seeking. So technically, if you are not actively seeking a job, you are not included in the labor rate participation. I'm not going to go too far into this, but basically, so unemployment rate 3.9%, labor rate participation 65.2%, which is also very high. Mm-hmm. All in all, in short, this means that people are working and people are looking for jobs.
Yeah. There are more jobs than there are people looking for work.
Yes.
Yeah.
So, like, what explains this labor shortage? And I've done my research. I have a theory, but I want to hear yours
I can't wait to hear your theory. So the thing is that everyone's trying to answer that question, and to be honest,
I think I have the answer.
It's a combination of things,
you know. Yeah, okay.
I don't think it's just one thing that's causing all of this, and I can't, I have an idea of what you're going to say next, but it's not just that. Okay, I think there's a combination. So for one, I think we have to look at the demographics. We have an upside down pyramid in terms of the baby boom having such a larger generation than we have.
Yep.
And so ultimately there will be less people on the work market. It's just a mathematical. Yeah, we can help with immigration and we can help with automation because that will lower the amount of work that the workers needed. But at the end of the day, it's a big change. It's a big difference between, if you look at the demographic pyramid of Quebec, at the end of the day, in 5-10 years, we're in trouble.
Yeah.
Yep. Because then we'll see the complete exit of the baby boom.
And the only reason and just if I can add on to that, the only reason that the population of Canada and Quebec has been increasing, it's not due to babies, newborns.
No.
It's due to immigration.
Yes.
That's the only, same thing with the U.S., same thing for a lot of industrialized and developed countries.
Yep.
The only reason that their populations are increasing, and some of them are decreasing, but for the ones who are increasing, it's due to immigration. It's not 100%. Due to women having babies.
Well, it's funny because we can talk about it after, but a lot of people talk about overpopulation, but there's the birth rate is dropping, not increasing. So, we're slowly going to a depopulation, not everywhere in the world, because I know that there's some countries that they don't have any issues with that, but especially with the developed countries like Canada or the U.S.,
because the issue with that, and what a lot of people don't understand, is the issue with that is who is going to take care of the elderly. If you don't have a tax base to collect the tax, where are you going to get all the money to pay for the social services? Yeah. And this is an issue that not just Canada is having, the whole Western world. We're all everyone's looking at it going, crap, okay, what are we going to do about this?
Yes.
Because there's no we're running out of money to pay for the baby boomers who want to have their retirement.
Yeah, man, it's gonna be interesting to see in the next 10 years. I think it's not gonna be very long for us to see.
It's gonna get messy. I
what
think
the effects are, because it's not in 30 years. It's very soon. I think.
Yeah.
But anyway, just to answer your question around like shortage of labor. So I think for one, that's a big factor. That started before COVID. Then COVID came in, and then we like notably we had less immigration, of course, when that came through. Everybody was on lockdown. We had less immigration. I'd be curious to know what those numbers look like, but I'm sure it wasn't as much as
immigration during COVID.
Yeah, in general. But also,
can you check that out for us, Joey?
Yeah, that'd be good.
Yeah, I'm just curious.
Pull up some help.
I won't be surprised if it's zero. Anyway,
I don't think it's zero.
We'll see what it is.
I don't think it's zero, but it's got to be a little lower than usual. And then the last thing that I think was an effect on this whole thing is a lot of people had time to think during COVID. They were paid to get to stay home and to be safe, in that sense. But they had time to think. They had time to rethink what they want to do in life. Maybe change up their profession, their profession. So maybe didn't return back to what they were doing previously. So there was a shuffle possibly in there too, and I think as well. Like, did you find out about those numbers?
Yeah. What's the number?
So in 2020 during COVID, the numbers dropped down to 74,000 immigrants. Compared to 2019, that was at 341,000.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah,
so,
and now we're back up to, so just if for those of you that didn't hear, so 2019, 350,000 roughly, let's say? 340,000 immigrants that came to Canada. 2020, the year after, was how many? 74,000 due to COVID.
And now we're back up.
I think we're back up to 550,000 immigrants.
Probably now, but in 2022, it was 430.
2022, Canada had 430,000 immigrants.
Yeah.
Interesting. Okay. And again, just to repeat, the only reason that the population of Canada is increasing, it's due to immigration. It's not due to the birth rate.
No. Yeah, exactly. Yeah. So that's combating and helping with that. But there's a lot of people leaving the market too in the terms of baby boom. So I think that's like, there's a combination of things that are affecting us right now. And then the other thing too is the immigration needs to be, are we making sure that the immigration coming in are filling the holes that we need? That's another thing that's important to know. Like, if we need nurses, are we bringing in nurses? Or are we bringing in, and are we recognizing the studies that
yes.
So a lot of people that are coming to the country are specialized workforce, but we're not recognizing it. We don't let them.
Can you give us some examples of this, please?
I mean,
this is a big topic, and
big.
it's finally getting covered by CBC is still not covering it, obviously, but other responsible news sources are starting to cover this.
Yeah.
When people are coming in as doctors, why do they have? We have a doctor and nurse shortage in Quebec and in Canada.
Yeah.
Why do we not recognize their education? Yeah. Why do we make them go through the whole process again? We have a big problem that could be solved quite easily or much quicker, and we're not letting that happen.
Well, I think that for one, we have to make sure that these people are actually capable. So I think it comes down to we have a program in Quebec where we do recognize certain things. So I work in the skilled trades market a lot. So I'll see that a lot. I'll say, they've got a diploma back home. It translates to this here. So they'll have an equivalency, they call it. And so there is some of that. But it's like also, in other fields, which I can only imagine, I'm speaking not on facts here, but I can only imagine that if a doctor comes from somewhere else, you want to make sure that the person can actually
work in a hospital.
Yeah. And maybe operate or whatnot, whatever the skill may be. Let's just make sure. I'm okay with that.
Yeah, me too. Yeah,
I'm okay with just double checking quick. But I think that. But you're right. I think maybe we can be a little more lenient. I think maybe that's where we got to go.
Yeah,
I think that's the biggest thing. Yeah, for sure.
I like how you put that. Just double check he's got the right.
Yeah.
Just make sure he or she's actually a doctor.
Yeah. I mean, yeah.
I agree.
I think that's important. Yeah. Especially for those professions. But
so
there is a level of equivalency. We're not very generous, I would say, for that. I think we're, there's a lot of, for example, engineering is a big one that we see a lot. I got an engineering degree back home, but they're working in a factory. here.
Interesting.
It
And is that because, so in engineering, is this because it's a little bit, how do I say this? Is it because in Quebec, Ontario is very similar because it's more of a regulated space? So if is this private companies that don't want to recognize the fact that they have an engineering degree? Who is not recognizing that they don't have an engineering degree? You know what I mean?
For engineering in general, companies will want to see your diploma, or they got the ring or whatnot. You can be part of an order as well if you.
Yeah.
So, but they need to pass exams. They have to pass certain exams to have the same equivalency.
I guess
if they fail the exam.
Yeah, that's my question. So just to start to cut you off there, like in Quebec, so l'ordre des ingénieurs.
Yes.
So if someone comes from the Middle East, let's say, or India, they come here with an engineering degree. Yeah. They have to pass specific exams to get. Oh, they do. Okay.
Yeah. There's an exam that needs to do that. But if you're an engineer, even let's say my sister's an engineer, and she has a choice of being part of l'ordre des ingénieurs. It doesn't have to be.
Interesting.
Yeah.
Okay.
It's better.
Yeah.
I mean, we definitely encourage her to, but it's not necessary. Yeah.
Interesting.
But yeah, no. So I think maybe that's somewhere we can get some lift, is recognizing a little more. But again,
and this would help alleviate the labor shortage?
I don't think it would help alleviate the labor shortage, but like I said before, is that, do we have a labor shortage in general across all? I'd be curious to know that. I know that in my field we have a big labor shortage. Yours as well.
We have a labor,
the medical system clearly too. We hear about it on the news every day.
Yeah.
But is there everywhere that we have shortage? So.
Are we ready for my data?
Yeah, go ahead.
Okay, so
yeah.
I was doing I always prepare for my podcast, but I wanted to particularly prepare for this one because I was asking myself the same question, and I think this is why you're an interesting guy to begin with, but why I was like, I really want to get Mitch on because I want to talk about the labor shortage. Yeah. People keep saying labor shortage, especially amongst employers, people that own companies. They're like, man, God damn, it's like really hard to find people now.
Yes.
So for you Canadians out there, which is basically everyone that listens to the podcast, here's a fun fact if you live in Quebec. So who's the biggest employer in Quebec? By far, it's the government of Quebec. They employ 22.8% of the population, 625,000 people. Yeah. To put that into perspective, the next closest company I think was at 50,000 people.
Wow.
Okay, so it's 10x, whatever the next closest thing. An even scarier stat, since the beginning of COVID in 2020 to today, 86.7% of all the jobs created since the beginning of the pandemic in Canada have been through the government, whether that's municipal, whether that's federal, or whether that's provincial. Mm. These are statistics from the Fraser Institute of Research. So my theory is that, because if you look at the data,
they're creating a vacuum.
Well, yes, and everyone's working. The labor rate participation is high. I would definitely agree baby boomers are retiring. You have the wealth effect. You have a lot of people. It's a big mix of things. You have the wealth effect after COVID, everyone who owned a house. Joey's from Vancouver. I mean, that's like the most exacerbated example. Vancouver, Toronto.
Yeah.
I mean, over COVID, the value of their home doubled.
Oh,
people take out like home equity lines of credit. They do stuff like that. They're like, you know what? I'm going to retire. They feel wealthier. That's an effect. So you're dropping the actual amount of people that can participate in it. Mm-hmm. And the other biggest competitor after this data here is the government. And just to repeat it again, I want to like really focus on this. 86.7% of all jobs created since the beginning of the pandemic in 2020 in Canada, the government has provided those jobs. Mm-hmm. This distorts the market completely. Mm-hmm. And you hear people, when I speak to, we have an office in Ottawa, when Ottawa's a big government town. When you speak to private employers around there, they go, I can't compete with the government. I can't pay the same salary. I can't give a pension for life.
Yeah.
And the government's going to keep offering the pension for life because basically what politician wants to take away someone's pension? That's not going to happen.
Yeah.
And so they are completely distorting the market. And what ends up happening over time is, if we have now 1 in 5 people in Canada are employed by the government. There's pros, there's cons. There's always a balance. There's government jobs are always going to be available. They're always going to exist. I'm not saying you shouldn't have government jobs. We need government jobs for sure. But typically speaking, the only way, if you're an employer, the only way that you're going to hire someone is if the revenue that this person can generate, you make an assumption that whatever it's going to cost you, they're going to be able to bring in more revenue than the cost. Yeah. That's how the private market works. So you're getting people that adds to productivity. In the government, typically speaking, for a wide array of reasons, most of which because, let's be honest, it's not their money, it's the taxpayers' money. You know, basically that's how government's funded. It's money by the taxpayers. Yeah. Typically speaking, most departments, for every dollar you're putting into it, it doesn't give you more than $1 back in productivity. It's less than $1 of productivity. What ends up happening is if the labor market, if the government keeps employing more people, it's a drag on the economy because it takes more resources to go into paying that. It's not adding productivity to the economy. And where do they get that? They basically have to increase taxes more in other places, whether that's people like you and me on salary, companies that need to pay more corporate tax. Yeah. There's all kinds of ways. So that's one of the contributing factors right now. Where are all the jobs going? They're going, and I'm not saying this is right or this is wrong. This is just, I'm looking at this from a factual standpoint. This is what's happening right now. And I would definitely say that this is one of the reasons why people in the private market, in the private economy, companies like mine and companies like Aerotek, why we're having difficulty finding labor.
Good people.
Yeah.
Well, listen, I mean, I would be curious to know how it works elsewhere. Like, I think a lot of the places in the world, the government's the main employer.
To put it into perspective, for the U.S., I want to say they're up to 14 or 15% of their entire population is employed by the government. So, but that's a big difference between 15 and 22. Yeah, that's a big difference. The U.S., you could say they're super capitalistic, so maybe that's a bad example. You could also say China actually has a higher amount that work for the government one way or another. I think it was 34% or something like that. But interesting enough, here's just another fun fact. If you look at China from 50 years ago, they got all the way up to, or 60 years ago, excuse me, they got all the way up to, I think, 75% of people one way or another, if they were working for the government. And since they've dropped that, China in the past 60 years has gotten way wealthier than they were 70 years ago. So I think there's a balance. 75% is too high. If you have everyone working for the government, I don't think that's a good thing.
Right.
I think there's a nice balance. Is 22% too high? I don't know.
Yeah, speaking of countries that have a population issue, China is one of them.
God, do they ever.
Yeah, that's going to be a big problem.
God,
same thing, 10 years. We'll see what happens, but they'll have to come up with some creative solutions. But I think that, like, to go back to your point about like jobs and whatnot, and I think it's a difficult time to refer to because it was COVID, you know, like you're talking about a time where the government was trying to keep companies open because they were shutting everything down. At the end of the day, they gave contracts out. Yeah, I mean, like, you know, they gave ventilator contracts out to certain companies, and we're not going to say names and whatnot, but like, I don't even think they're using those anyways. You know, I think they're just trying to keep them afloat, which is a good thing and it's necessary. Yeah. So I don't know. It's a tough time to compare like those types of numbers, but it doesn't help. That's for sure. Yeah.
One thing is for sure, there's definitely a labor shortage.
Yes,
we can all agree on that.
100%.
There's a labor shortage. Yeah. Whatever's happening.
Yes.
Which again, like we just said, could be multiple reasons. Could be baby boomers retiring. Maybe the government's doing all the job. Maybe there's a lack of skilled labor coming into the country. I think all of it contributes. Yeah. But there's an issue.
But
right
the economy too, the Quebec economy, and I think we should probably look at it, but was growing consistently between 1% and 3%.
But the only reason the Quebec economy and the Canadian economy, again, this is just like my last little fun fact, the stat. If you look at GDP growth from, again, the 2020s, so for all these jobs, 86.7%, if we actually adjusted for immigration since just before COVID to today, the private market has shrank. There's less new companies being created. There's less productivity. GDP is basically just how many people do you have, an oversimplified version. GDP, how many people do you have? How productive are they? Yeah. That's what a GDP is. And if you look at the private market, so private companies, not government companies, adjusted for immigration, it's actually shrunk since pre-COVID. Right. All of the productivity is coming from government jobs, government contracts. Government.
It's funny you say that. I was reading an article, and I forget where I was doing that, but it said something around the GDP in Quebec versus Ontario, where it takes us more people to equate the same as Ontario, for example.
Interesting.
So
I didn't know that.
Yeah.
Huh.
So it takes like I think I don't want to say exact numbers, but like something like 24 versus 18 or something, like to have the same GDP. So it's
Which is not good.
No, that's not good at all.
That's not good. Yeah.
So it's funny that you were talking about the government jobs and whatnot. And
well,
being
yeah,
less
it's like
productive
it's like
but,
I always there has to be a balance, and it's
Yeah.
like I've definitely changed. I'm more pragmatic in the sense that, you know, the system is the system. It's very difficult to change it. But yeah, when there's two extremes, you can have, you know, tyrants and not enough government. That's not good either. But you can have the other extreme where it's just red tape and nothing gets done.
Yeah.
And there's many instances, and you hear people, especially private companies, it's like it's very difficult to get stuff done when there's so much red tape. There's all these permits, there's all these regulatory bodies watching over all these fees. And what ends up happening is all of these costs are just passed on to the consumer anyways.
Right.
People think that it's, you know, the company's going to make less profit. No. They're going to make their margins.
Charge more.
Their margins are going to stay the same. It just, the cost is passed on to you, the consumer.
Yeah.
So you're just paying more for the products and services you want and need.
Yeah.
That's all that happens.
Well, it's funny because, you know, it takes more money to live, for example.
Oh God,
these
does
days,
it ever? Yes.
Right? So it takes more money. So now the employees are requiring more money. So salaries have gone up. Minimum wage now 15 something. And in the past 3 years, the salaries have increased like 8%, something crazy like that. But what that does, all that does is it increases the end cost in the end. So a company like Metro, for example, is paying their warehouse employees $3, $4, $5 more an hour than they used to. Where do you think you see that? Directly into the increase in costs
for the groceries.
In the food.
Yeah.
So it's the same money, just going in a different way. And so I just found that funny when I would see all the increases and stuff. And on the other end, we'd hear clients increasing rates, you know, and we're like, okay, well, now I know where it's coming from. You know? But it's important to understand that, like, if you're going to pay people more, and then this whole interest rate thing, for example, the interest rates went up, right? Now the prime's at 6.7%, something like that. Yeah. Which is not like abnormal if you think about it.
Historically speaking, it's very normal.
It's not that crazy, you know? I mean, people who probably got their mortgages at 1.8%, they're freaking out, but it's not the norm. Like 6.7 is the norm. And then it went up, 5%, let's say? But recently, salaries went up 8, 9, superior to the interest rate. So it's kind of like, if you look at the big scheme of things, in the grand scheme of things, it's not...
It's very interesting to see what we're going through, because it's like, and they keep trying to say, so the central banks are trying to manufacture a soft landing, because, you know, inflation was getting out of hand. Typically speaking, how do you fight inflation? You put the interest rates up, and when you put the interest rates up, you know, money costs more. So like, if I'm a company, if I'm a company, I can go get $1 million loan and pay 1.5% interest on that, and I'm going to make 15% by me investing it back into my company or whatever. It's a no-brainer. You know, if it's going to cost you 7%, all of a sudden you're going, you're going to double check. You're going to, you know, because 1.2% is free money.
Yeah, pretty much.
It's literally, well, if you think about it, like at one point, inflation was 5-6%. Yeah. And the interest you had to pay was 1.5%. The bank is, if you think about it, mathematically speaking, the bank is paying you to take a loan.
Pretty much.
Because if your money just sits there, it's going to rot 6%, 7%, 8% a year. That's what inflation does. So, whole other
different conversation.
Love this shit. We're getting off topic. We're getting off topic. Okay, so we gotta hear. Let's pull up the questions. Funny enough, and this is just for the people out there, because I've been talking about this a lot, just like everyone else. I typed into ChatGPT. I said, I have a headhunter coming on the podcast. ChatGPT, can you do me a favor? Can you give me some questions, some interesting questions that I can ask my dear friend Mitch Langlois? It said, sure, Curtis, and it gave me a bunch of questions. So I'm using some of those questions today.
I have not tried that yet. ChatGPT, I hear about it all the time. I don't know.
We just paid for the subscription. So it's $20. I made a mistake last week or 2 weeks ago. I said it's $43. It's $20 American a month. And you get certain privileges, because one of the downsides to using ChatGPT is when you go on, if you don't have the paid version, it's always down. Yeah. There's too much traffic on it.
Okay.
Do the paid, it's never down. So it's just all stuff. You get updates quicker.
Cool.
Yeah, but
So this thing is just, it spits out whatever's smart, right?
You gotta see
try
it
it
for yourself. Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, so the role, we kind of already talked about this, but like the role, if we're to simplify this,
Yes.
what is the role of a
Recruiter.
headhunter?
Yeah. So a headhunter is important to make the differences. So there's recruiters and headhunters.
I didn't even know this. Great, let's get into this.
So headhunters typically is somebody who has a very strong personal network, understands and takes small amounts of contracts per year. A headhunter will do high level positions. So they have headhunting firms for like vice
VPs
presidents
and stuff like that.
CEOs.
I didn't know this. Interesting. Okay.
A headhunting fee is different than, because they literally have to find somebody who's working. It's not somebody who's just looking for work. Whereas a recruiter, and I think there's a little bit of both in the life of a recruiter, you need to headhunt sometimes. Headhunting just means going to find the person aggressively rather than the person come to you, or it's in your network and you're approaching the person for your client. For example, if I'm a headhunter and you hire me to hire your next CEO, well, I would probably I would have a network of these people that are CEOs and say, hey, listen, how you doing over there? Are things going well? I have a friend.
A little wink,
and it's a little bit of a wine and dine type of
slower
business.
process,
Yeah,
but
very slow, like 3 4 months per placement.
Interesting.
We're not in that space. That's not my world.
I did not know this. I didn't know this. Okay. So I guess hence the word hunter.
Yeah.
So you're on the offense looking for someone trying to...
Yes.
Cool.
Not that we don't do that. We do. It's just not our main focus. It's not just that. We do a lot of different things. We have mass posting. We have attractive... people are attracted to the brand. They'll come see us because if they come and apply to Aerotek, they don't apply to just one place. They apply to multiple clients that we have, and we help them pick the right one, But
so that's headhunting. So what's recruiting?
No,
what's a recruiter?
That's recruiting, what I just talked about. Headhunting is
Can you repeat that again? Sorry.
Yes. Okay.
Yeah,
so
please.
recruiting, we do a little bit of headhunting if we need to. For example, the niche skill sets. It's things that are very rare.
Okay.
Like skilled trades, for example. There's some people that we just find a plumber. It's so hard to, even plumbing companies can't find plumbers anymore, So that's more headhunting for sure, because we need to approach people. But if you're recruiting, a mass recruit, well, we have many different ways. We have our networks, of course. We have our CRM, that we're using. We have a bank of candidates in our system that we are aware of. We know them. We have them to reach out to. We have job postings. There's many different ways of attracting talent. Best way always is referrals. That's the best.
Referrals, yeah?
Oh, yeah. There's no better way to do that.
Can you give us an example of how that would play out?
Well, if somebody has a great experience with you, they'll refer you people. It's just about asking constantly. There's no secret to it. It's not a secret to,
people I agree with you. People would be surprised at the positive results you can get from
just ask.
Referrals. Yeah.
But you just ask more than once, and there's a way to ask. Okay. So that's one thing I can talk about.
How do you ask?
So, okay. I'll give you an example. Do you know any helicopter pilots?
No.
So
I know one plane pilot.
Yeah. Okay. But do you know who knows helicopter pilots?
I don't think so. No.
Other helicopter pilots. So it's really not that complicated. You find one and then you just ask and get into that network that way. But the way that you ask is something like, for example, if it's general. So when I'm hiring for us, the biggest thing I say is you got to be a little more specific. The human brain is not wired to be very specific. So if I tell you, do you know anybody looking for work? For you, you'd be like, maybe, I don't know. I'd have to get back to you. I'm not sure. But if I asked you the question, hey, you play hockey? Yeah. Who is the captain on your team? Or who's then you're specific. You can answer that question.
Yes.
So if I said to you, you went to high school? Yeah, perfect. Yeah. Who's in your class? Who you have a couple buddies? Yeah, I know a guy. Yeah. Can I have his number? So it's a little more specific than just saying, do you know anybody looking for work?
Interesting.
And so I don't really care if they're looking for work. I'll approach them and do the work. I just want to know someone like you. That's what I'm trying to get, is I want more courteous I want more people like Curtis, not people that are looking for work. If they're looking for work, I mean, there's a reason.
Because I guess people,
and especially in this market.
And I guess people, well, typically speaking, most people, they're going to associate with people that are similar to them.
Yeah,
you know?
Yeah, exactly. But it's just, exactly. So in French, ce qui se ressemble, s'assemble.
I like that.
Yeah, so it's a bit more specific. There's little tricks like this, tricks of the trade that we train people on how to do that and how to ask questions, and even the screening part of things is cool too. It's just, never yes or no questions, always open-ended. Because if it's a yes or no question, you can say yes or no, and then you're done. You can't really get more into it. There's little tricks to the trade for sure, but it's not rocket science,
How many people? Because you manage how many people?
So I mean, around like directly 5, 6, but maybe total 15, 20. But the whole operation we're about 40
people.
But in Montreal, across all operating companies, we're about 100 something now in Montreal. When I started 10 years ago, we were 20 across all operations. So
and you guys are up to 100, so you're doing something right.
Yeah, so we've been growing steadily, and it's been great. We've had a lot of, honestly, we've got good people. That's what counts,
There was a line, I'll never forget this line, and I use it all the time. We played hockey at the Pierrefonds Arena, and then afterwards, I forget exactly what we were talking about, but I'll always remember this. You said, I think I was maybe expressing my frustration with one of the employees that we had, which happens, like, just,
For sure.
And he was a really energetic guy, and I was trying to tame him down. He said, "Hey, Curtis,
oh yeah,
you would always rather learn to tame a tiger than
paint
put
stripes on a kitten."
Yeah, than paint stripes on a kitten.
Yeah.
That's such a good line.
Yeah.
Can you talk about that? So it's basically because your job, you directly manage 5 or 6 people. You got a team of, let's say, 15 or 20. What is your day-to-day? Because you're a very, correct me if I'm wrong, you're in the business development space, right?
Yes.
Okay.
So my role, I oversee our business development section of the business. So yes, I manage directly other salespeople. Yeah. Who then in turn may manage recruiters or whatnot.
Do you like it?
Yeah, I love it. There's ups and downs in management, it's not always easy, but overall I got some great people with me. So that's what that makes me come into work every day, to be honest. It's the people. It's not, I like what I do and I'm passionate about it, but it's really the people that keeps me there,
of course. Of course.
I could go sell anything. It doesn't really matter. But what ties me to that is the people. So, and it's been fun since I've been there 10 years. I've seen a lot of people, progress in their career and whatnot. And that's cool.
And you've progressed as well.
Of course. Yeah. I mean, there's somebody up on top of me doing the same for me. And it's probably the same feeling as I have too. So, I like it. I'm motivated. It's never the same. It's the staffing world. There's not much you can control, unfortunately. So you got to be really good at being good with not being in control, and then just focus on the things that you can control, which is effort. Which is consistency. Yeah. Those are things that we are a lot more focused on than, like a high potential, but never really, because if you're always up and down in this market, you're not going to win.
Would you rather have skill level A, attitude D, or the opposite?
The opposite.
Why?
Because you can teach skill. I mean, maybe not all skill, but you'll find something that they're good at and exploit that. And then, that's the biggest thing is you can't teach heart. You can't. It's just you either you have it or you don't. And so, I mean, part of it too is understanding the person and knowing where they come from and what's important to them. Maybe that's something how you can get out of them, but you can't just limit to what you can teach, in that sense.
I would agree, but there's also, it's very, very, very important, in my opinion, and for anyone who's running a business or just working with people, there's nothing worse than someone who has a bad attitude, because they're going to bring down everyone else.
Yes.
If they're a cancer in the office, get them the fuck out of there. They can't
more
get them out.
Yeah, it does.
It doesn't even matter if they're an A player.
Empty chair.
Get them out.
Yeah.
Yeah, because and a lot of employers, they just see all the numbers that they're bringing in. Oh my God, this guy or this girl, they're bringing in so much money for me but in the long term, there's a really good chance it's actually going to end up hurting the company as opposed to being a benefit to the company.
But even adding to your team can be a problem. And that's another thing too, is that, there's people that are, you'll see maybe a higher turnover just because of that one person.
Yeah,
that's
if you get an asshole,
nice or not helping, for sure. I mean, that's not good.
There was this, my dad had, I'm not going to say the names of the companies, but my father had lunch with someone who's an employee at a current insurance brokerage. Okay. Yeah. And this insurance brokerage within the last 3-4 years, but they purchased another insurance brokerage. Okay. And there was the employees that came along in this acquisition. So the girl that my dad was having the lunch with, the woman, said, I have never been around people that are this toxic in this environment. So just in short, the acquisition they made, the employee was just complaining, these people are just such assholes for coming in here right now. And and she was just saying, there's some employees who have left because they don't want to work in this environment.
Yeah, exactly.
Like imagine having someone just come in every day and they're just being an asshole to you.
I wouldn't do it.
It's not acceptable.
Yeah.
Arrogance is, I have zero patience for arrogance. If you're arrogant or...
Yeah, it's the most important thing is behavior, is
attitude.
Yeah, attitude.
What's your attitude?
It's it's the number one. Well, we and especially for us, we have core values that are very important in our hiring decisions that we can't go. We'll way more focus on that in the interview than
their skill set.
Nobody comes out of school a professional recruiter. That doesn't make sense. I didn't even know what that was before I joined. I didn't even know there was this kind of world. It's a big world. We're talking $1 billion market, easy, multiple billions, just in Quebec.
Wow.
Just for that space, and I had no idea that existed. I had no clue. All these things that you're talking about, the medical world there, I heard that on the news yesterday about the public wants to abolish private agencies for nurses, right? That they're trying to say all those agencies, that's part of the same business that we're in. All those nurses that are on contract working in the public sector through the private sector, all that is the same market, I didn't know that existed.
Interesting.
Yeah.
When you're doing an interview,
yes,
do you have any tips for people out there that are looking for work? Like what do you look for? You've gone through a lot of interviews. You've seen what employers are looking for in employees.
Yes.
So for someone, let's take an example. You just graduated from university and you're looking to get into the workforce, or you're an immigrant that just immigrated to Quebec or other parts of Canada. Are there any tips that you can give to someone who's looking for a job in Canada?
Yeah. Well, listen, I think the first and easiest step, and it's easier said than done, but just be yourself. I think that the employer is really trying to get to know you. That's the goal of the interview. It's not really to evaluate you or whatnot. It's just to get to know you. And then they'll make a decision on if you fit in there or not. If you don't fit, then it's best that you were yourself, and that you wouldn't have worked out, whatever. Yeah. So just be comfortable with yourself. The other thing I would say is don't pretend that you know something in an interview. That's the worst thing you could do. Biggest turn off for me, for sure, is if you pretend like you know something and then I ask you something and you really don't know about it, I'm done. I would have preferred you say, I really don't know that, but I'm really curious to understand, I really want to learn.
Do you have an example?
Well, I just a perfect example is one of my clients, like a plan reading test. So you'll be saying okay, yeah, so you can read electrical plans? Yes, of course I can read it. And then you put an electrical plan in front of them and they have no clue what they're looking at. Why would you just not say that? I don't get it, So that's for sure. The other thing too is don't over embellish your experience. If you're a student, for example, it's okay, man, you're a student. And we know that you just finished school, and you don't need to pretend like you've done so much. You haven't yet, and that's okay. We want you to accomplish a lot with us. We're just trying to see your character, So, usually like embellish the job titles that they had at Rona, for example.
LinkedIn is notorious for that.
Oh yeah, the embellishment is insane.
God.
Yeah. Well, that's in our field. That's actually a red flag, by the way, folks. Like if you embellish your job title, it's considered a red flag. Like, like a manager of custodial services, like it's like a janitor, like it's just what it is. No, but seriously, no, we see that, and it's like, I don't think they have that title, man. I've been there. So that's a red flag for us. Another thing too is if there is a lot of job movement, which something that we probably should talk about too.
Sure. Yeah. Let's get into that.
A lot of that.
It's funny you say that because that's definitely something I look at. If I see on your CV, if I see on the LinkedIn, 1 year, 8 months, 7 months, 1 year, 1.5 years, I don't want to hire you.
So it's, well, moving forward, you're going to see a lot more of that, by the way, because that's just the way it is now. We'll talk about it after, but we're going to see a lot more of jumpiness, we call it, but just be prepared to properly explain yourself. That's what I would say is it's not yes, it's seen, like you just said, it's a perfect example is that, yes, right away. So what people will do is they'll just lie on their CV, man. That's what they'll do to really counter what you just said. For example, as an employer, they'll be like, they won't even look at my CV. I'll take this out. I'll take this out. And I'll just put the same time there.
I'll put 3 years.
Yeah, how would you know the difference, right? So rather than that, I encourage you to be honest. Just be prepared to answer the question and why it is that you did that. And it's okay, man, if you made mistakes. You were 16 and you worked at Rona for 8 months, and it's not a big deal. It's okay.
Yeah.
It's just now what makes you different now?
For me, well, I just want to, let me explain myself just a little bit. If I see someone that's 24 years old and they've had 6 jobs, much less of a red flag.
I understand.
Because, you got summer job, you got this job, you're going through school. You're basically just trying to get whatever job you can get,
Yes,
like most of the time it's either
100%,
landscaping or you're a busboy somewhere as a boy. Okay?
Pretty much.
If you're 35 and I see, you've been working in the labor market for 10 years. So since the ages of 25 to 35 and you've had 9 jobs, I look at that differently. I might go, okay, what's going on here?
Well, you'd have to talk to them first, see what happens. I would say at this point in this market, call everybody, find out what's the story, and then from there make your decision rather than making your decision on a piece of paper. Because a lot of the times, and that's the thing that we offer too, is that we don't present CVs to our clients. We present over the phone. Because you're more than just a piece of paper at the end of the day, right? There's way more behind that piece of paper than what's written on it. And so we refuse to just shoot over a CV to our clients or resume. We make sure to get on the phone with them and say, here's why we selected this person. Here's why we like them. And that's a benefit of working through us too, as well, as you'll get that type of service if you'd like.
I guess for you guys too, at the same time, it's going to, at the end of the day, you are in business development. You're in a sales role. So I guess, correct me if I'm wrong, that would allow you to get a better feel to see if this client of yours is interested or not, because you can tell a lot by their
the job description. Yeah, we do that a lot.
But you can tell by their tone too. Is this guy dicking me around, or is this person actually interested?
Yes, yes. Well, first of all, we don't submit resumes until we have agreements in place and whatnot. We don't proactively just maybe in some cases if we're trying to win a contract or whatnot, but I don't think that's not our best practice. Usually we've already gotten what I say in my world to my team is, if we're not adding value, you're going to have struggles because so it's important to find that pain. What's going wrong? Where can you add value? From there on, it's like, it fits like a glove because the client is in need of your services. You're not going anywhere. You can work through the kinks. There will be, I always explain to our clients when we're doing talent acquisition for them, it's the opposite of the honeymoon phase for us. Like, at the beginning, when you get married, it's great, This is the opposite. It's horrible because we're learning the kinks. Like, we're trying to figure out what you like, what you don't like, who fits in the work environment, who doesn't.
Yeah.
There's a lot of learning moments. So it's okay that it doesn't go well the first time. In fact, we're lucky if it does and great if it does. Good. But it's very rare. Like, there's a learning curve.
for you guys.
Well, yeah, for sure, because
You don't fully understand what they need. Yeah,
that's it.
Makes sense.
What fits, not what we know what they need, okay? Because we qualify the position, we understand what they want, what they need. Sometimes what they want doesn't really match what's available. We'll have a client who will say, I need this, and with this requirement, and sometimes they'll say, okay, every time you say this requirement, we're going in a smaller pool, and a smaller pool, and a smaller pool. And that just increases the amount of time that we're going to take
and cost
to find the person. And cost, for sure. I mean, there's three things. You can pick two. It's cost, speed, and quantity. Pick two. You want a lot? Well, if you want a lot, it'll cost you a lot of money. And, there's only three.
There's always a trade-off.
Yeah, there's always a trade-off.
Yeah.
So it's just a question of maybe they don't need all that. That's where we're trying to maybe see if we can help them. Because what we do is we present facts and we help you accomplish what you need to get done based on what's really out there, not based on your dreams and hopes, because that doesn't make sense.
What is your target client? So
Yeah.
the employers that you work with, what is the size of companies that you guys, I know you have a wide range.
Yeah.
You mentioned that
Yeah.
we work with companies that have this many employees and companies that have this many employees, but
Yeah.
what's the sweet spot for you guys? Or maybe you don't have one, maybe it doesn't matter. But what typically speaking, the clients you work with the most are what?
Yeah, I would say probably medium to large size.
So any from 50 employees
100,
plus?
Yeah, 100 plus would
Okay.
be our usual typical clients. But we don't stop there. At the end of the day, like I said, it's really the partnership level. How much are they willing to invest in us? And sometimes a company's small and they become huge and they need us the most. Accompanying companies from small to medium or from small to large, that's where you need a lot of help in the market, recruiting power.
Do you guys completely replace HR, or
No.
do you? Okay, so you basically complement
Yes,
the
we
existing
complement.
HR.
So most companies have an HR department. After
Yes.
a certain amount of people, you kind of need one because it becomes complicated.
Yeah, taking care of people is complicated,
It's a full-time job.
and people are
Yeah.
complicated.
Yes, that's right. So, and then if you get into a bigger company, then they have talent acquisition departments, which are under the HR teams.
Yeah.
So in those cases, we'll be a complement to the talent acquisition team. But in most cases, the HR department is stuck doing the recruiting themselves.
Yeah.
With a lot less tools, a lot less equipped. We are just that. We live and breathe that every day. So it's a math equation. We'll get there faster than you for sure. If you're one person at a desk with no systems, no technique, you're just posting and praying at the end of the day.
Most of the time, so whenever you're presenting a candidate to a company, an employer who's looking for a person to fill job X,
Yeah.
are you presenting this usually to the HR person? Are you usually presenting this to the founder or the president of the company?
Very rarely the president is involved with this
even
stuff.
with 50 employees?
Well, yeah, rarely.
Really?
Yeah. We don't really. It happens, and great if they are, but they've got, people that should be taking care of that. But at the end of the day,
the reason I asked that question is because there's other opinions. There's always two sides to the story. Reid Hoffman, so founder of LinkedIn, and I found this very interesting. He said that the first 100 hires that he's always made in companies, so he was at PayPal, LinkedIn, a couple of other tech companies. He goes, this is him, I'm paraphrasing. He says, I firmly believe that the founder should be involved in making those decisions and helping those decisions, because the first 100 people of a company, you're essentially the cultural co-founders, I guess. So his point was, I'm sure you'll be able to find the people with that skill set, but are they going to fit the culture? And it's very important to help mold the culture at the beginning.
Yeah.
So I just find that interesting. Sometimes they're there, sometimes they're not.
I think that's great. I think that's great. For sure. I don't disagree with that at all. It's just maybe sometimes a question of time, time allocated to, is it where you need to allocate the time the most? And it is a critical piece, but you should be able to rely on someone else when you're at 50 to 100 people that has the same core values and understands how to recognize those, Gotta have to, if you want to get big, you can't do it by yourself. At the end of the day, if you hang on to everything,
you'll never grow.
You'll never get to anywhere. You'll just stay at the same place, which is, hey, equality will be great for sure. But at one point, Let people maybe spread their wings. Let other people take on more. That's my philosophy. But at the end of the day, who do I deal with? It depends. So it depends, one, where the budget comes from. Is it the HR budget? Is it the operations budget that are using my services? Sometimes I don't even speak to HR in some companies because it's totally separate. It's contract work. It's like, is HR involved if you hire a plumber to come fix the building?
You're asking me?
Yeah, like if you needed to repair your building, for example, HR wouldn't be involved.
What I would do is I would tell Hala. Hala would speak to the janitor of the building, who would speak to the landlord, who would then get someone else to...
Okay, so wrong example. But if you were to subcontract work out, you wouldn't necessarily have HR involved. It's an operational decision.
Not. Yeah.
Right? So in that case, that if we're working in that sense with a company, then, we always work with HR because it's important. We want to follow their guideline and what they're doing internally. We don't want to just come in and do something completely different. We always partner up with them, but we don't always work through them, if that makes sense.
Yeah, no, it does. It does. It makes sense.
A lot of times we do, though. A lot of times it's like and each department wants different things. Operation is always speed. How fast can I get them? How fast can we get this done? HR is a lot about quality. It needs to be quality. It needs to be meeting their standards, which is very understandable. And then procurement or finance, all cost. So based on who you're talking to, you really got to adapt your narrative. You really got to change up how you approach it, because you can't go and say, here's my price to a finance person without justifying it. You could talk about all the contracts they missed out on because they don't have the people, rather than approaching them with the cost.
Interesting. So your pitch is different.
Well, for sure. You have to adapt a little bit to who you're talking to, for sure. Yeah.
Interesting.
If we're talking to HR, we're going to talk about what we do to screen our people. How do we screen them? What do we do? If we talk about operations, we say, listen, I got a network of this many people. We're ready to go when you are,
What's the best sales pitch you've ever made? No, you know what I mean? Sometimes like you walk in, you just pat yourself on the back after getting out of somewhere. Like, what's do you have any like good story? Like, I love good sales stories. Like I'll give you an example. There's this guy. His name's Andy Roy. He passed away not too long ago. So God rest his soul. And that's why I know he wouldn't want me to be saying his name out loud, but he's not around anymore, so I'll say his name. But really good guy. And he said, so he used to sell computers back in the day when this is like back in the 90s. You had the manufacturer, then you had the distributor. He was a distributor, and then that would sell to companies that needed computers. He was the middle. That doesn't exist anymore. If you want a product from Apple, you go to Apple. Yeah. So he knew his job was eventually gonna not exist. Yeah. But for what he used to do is he would go to the bars. He would find out who the decision makers were, and he would pretend to run into them at the bar. He'd sit next to them. He'd sit next to them and go, he knew exactly who they were, and he'd just strike up a conversation with them and play dumb and go, oh, no way, you're in computers. I'm a computer distributor.
That's so funny.
And he goes,
what are the odds?
Yeah. Oh, man, I got all these computers.
That's great.
But he would pretend to just run into them at the bar, and he said it worked like a charm. So just stuff like that. Like, did you ever have anything that really... Like any good stories where you're like, Jean-Michel, ça c'était bon, là. Ça c'était bon.
I mean, look, out of the ordinary like that, maybe not. I think it's a lot about because we do a lot of cold calling, a lot of, so it's a lot of overcoming objections, if you'd like. I got my fair share of no's, I'll tell you that. I mean, it's not easy. Yeah.
Yep.
Especially when people say, 95% of your cold calls are not going to lead to much, but that's okay.
More. It's actually between 98 and 99% do not lead to anything.
Well, there you go.
Like a good closing ratio. People don't understand this. If you're cold calling, a good closing ratio is 2%.
Yeah, it's crazy.
That's a good closing ratio.
Yeah, for sure. But it works. The thing is that
it's a numbers game.
The 2% is good. And then from there on, if you do a little more, then you get more. But so I'm definitely a fan of coal. I think it's still alive. I think we just got to continue to do that.
Yeah, I agree. That's what we're doing.
Crazy stories. Yeah.
Go. No, after you go, please.
No, I don't know, man. Lots of overcoming objections. So like, for example, one thing that I've learned over time is that when you are cold calling, it's important that you speak their language. You don't just come up with your lingo, and then they don't understand what that means. So a lot of the times on the phone, we'll have people say, well, what's your price? What's your price? And for us, it's like the last thing we want to do is give them a price on the phone, because how do you price this out on the phone? It is impossible, right? So I kind of compare it to their business.
Yeah.
So this particular time, I'm calling into a clothing company, and they said, well, what's your price? We're not going to meet with you if you don't give me a price. And I said, well, okay, well, how much for a T-shirt? And he said, what? And I was like, how much for one T-shirt? And he goes, I don't know. Like, exactly. I mean, it depends,
That's a
right?
good line.
Yeah.
That's good.
So I said, it's the same for me. I mean, if you're going to order a container of T-shirts, it'll be a little different, than if you're just going to order one T-shirt from me. And it's funny because, I got the meeting on.
That was my next question.
Yeah, I got the meeting, and it was a good one too, very good one. But it was funny, and he laughed about it. I think humor is important, and big thing about cold calling, just be polite. The biggest thing, it's like be polite and listen to what they're saying. The most frustrating thing is when the person's not listening, and when you're starting out cold calling, you just want the meeting, and you're just not listening to what the person's saying. It's okay. Like, you don't need the meeting on the cold call every time, but maybe get more information about the client. Maybe get an understanding of who you should call next, or a little bit of information that next week when you call them back, because you will, that's how it works.
Yeah.
Maybe you'll be able to use that information that you gained on that call.
Yeah.
It's not always about just booking the meeting. That's the end goal, and that's important. But it's not just that, that you get some information, try and talk.
Qualify the risk.
But and then the most important, the gatekeeper. People that are the ones that are putting you through to the people you're calling.
Very
so important to be polite.
Please
respectful.
Elaborate.
Yeah. So, in fact, it's funny in our training. A lot of the training that we do is a lot about that. It's about how to overcome objections for one, making sure you're equipped to answer those questions, not panic. Because when I first started, man, I would just. You're so nervous, when you start and you're calling people and you're like, oh, man, I got another no. But you're not listening to what they're saying, and that's what pisses them off the most, I would say. If someone calls me, and I've been cold called before, and I'm saying something and they're not listening, like, we don't have any needs. Okay, well, we do that, and we'd love to come and see you, and I'm repeating that. Well, you don't have to do that. You can say, listen, I understand you have no needs right now, and that's perfect for us. Because at the end of the day, we wouldn't be ready to deliver on your needs currently. We have no agreements. We don't know what you do. I don't know if I can provide value. That's kind of why I want to meet you, right? Rather than just continue to push the service.
Very important to listen. If I may add on to that, like my old man would always say, the 3 R's. Repeat. So repeat repeat what the person just said.
Yeah.
So it confirms that you're listening to them.
Yeah.
Reassure, resume.
Yeah. That's right.
Kind of just keep
that's
going
good.
through that.
That's a good one.
Yeah.
But the gatekeeper, what I was going to talk about is that's important too. And we train on how to, to
get past the Manons of the world.
Yeah.
Kind of like, oui, bonjour, puis-je vous aider?
Yeah, exactly. But also little details like the picture behind them.
Okay.
Things like that, like really simple things. Like we'll draw things on a board and pretend like I'm the gatekeeper and have people trained to coming into the place. And
you'll do role play?
Yeah, of course. You have to. Because then you're just sending people unequipped and they'll represent you poorly on the phone. And it's normal. I mean, if I got thrown into it with no training, I don't think that I'd be where I am. At the end of the day, I think I wouldn't have liked it at all, first of all. If you're not prepared to because, a lot of people are very nice and they're very understanding, but a lot of people are not.
Mm-hmm.
And so it's important that you're equipped for it, and also mentally prepared to being told no. What's the stat? Like
a lot of people can't handle that.
7 no's before you get a yes, something like that.
It's crazy. It's a lot.
So you got to keep
and you're
going.
gonna get people that are gonna dick you around. You're gonna get people that aren't serious. You're gonna get all 100%,
of that. Man.
All of that.
Yeah, it's a big.
You call. But there is no better feeling than making a sale off of a cold
absolutely.
call. There's no better feeling.
Yeah.
You're like, fuck yeah! I just literally called this guy out of the blue, had no idea who I was. Went to him, overcame all the objections. Did this, did that, gained his trust. I got the sale. Ugh.
Oh, it feels
it's a nice
great.
feeling.
I mean, that's why we do the job.
It's a nice
right?
feeling. Yeah,
absolutely. We have a big gong, and we used to have a big gong in the office. Just smack the gong when you get a sale. It was great, man. It's fun, and I think that's important in a company. Celebrate. I saw your place. This is great, man.
Thank you.
And I think you're going the right direction for that
Thank
stuff
you.
to get the because it is tough. It is tough to keep people motivating when you're in a business where most of the time you're being told no, you know?
Yeah. Well, it's another stat. Again, you know, I sound like a broken record, but if you have, like for us, it's a numbers game too, but if you have a closing ratio of 35%, that's a good closing ratio for home and car insurance.
Of course.
But if you look at it the other side, that means 2 out of 3 people are saying no to you. And these are the people you're just quoting. If you're going into the cold calling, again, you're going to have like 98% that are going to say no to you.
Yeah.
But out of that 98%, you'll find 10%. It's basically, so okay, if you have 100, in my experience, you have 100, 90, it's no. Then you have the bucket of 10% that are left. And out of that 10%, you got at least half of them that are going to dick you around. They'll say yes, but they're not actually serious.
Yeah, they're window shoppers. Yeah.
And then you got the other 5%, and sometimes, like, it goes the other way too in insurance. Sometimes they are interested. They might like me or like someone else, but I can't find a solution for them.
Right.
You know, so that also happens.
Yeah,
you know,
exactly. And to go back to what you asked me earlier was like, what type of clients do you work with? It's hard to answer that question because it's from so many different backgrounds and whatnot, you know, or different sizes and different industries. And there's not one specific type, but we need to add value. That's the important part, is if we're adding value and we're helping you win deals and we're helping you gain more traction, you know, you're going to treat us as a valued partner rather than just a supplier. And that's our biggest nightmare, is just being treated as a supplier. We need 10 people for Monday. That's where you really don't get good results, you know? Because the 10 people you're getting on Monday are the 10 people that are available, not good for the job, you know?
Interesting.
So anyway, so that's the biggest focus for us, for our sales force. And my job is to train them on, one, how do we add value? What kind of services can we offer?
For our customers.
How do you diagnose a pain? How do you know if something's going wrong? Because a lot of the times clients are not going to just welcome their problems over to you. Like sometimes they do, but most of the times they're going to say, no, things are going well. And that's because you're just talking to the wrong person, because there's no way in this market things are going well in hiring. It doesn't make sense.
Yeah.
It's not true.
Yeah.
Companies that we're seeing 1%, 2%, 3% turnover are up at the 20s and 30s, like 20-30% turnover at this point. Imagine
that was actually my next question that I wanted to get into, and now that you mentioned it.
Yes.
Employee retention.
Yes.
For businesses, for companies. Has it dropped in the past?
Considerably. But it depends on which. So here's what we see is that once you've passed a certain threshold, you've been with the company for a certain amount of time, then the turnover kind of drops. There's none. You know, people are going to carry out their careers.
Typically speaking, what number is that? 3 years, 5 years?
No, 5, 10 years.
5 years.
Plus, you know, that's where.
So if someone's been there for 5 years,
yes,
outside of retirement.
5 years plus. They've got good benefits with them usually.
Yeah.
They've got good situations. They're well waged because the company sees how much they're worth.
Got it.
Okay. Then you've got the 3 to 5 years, which is where it's becoming, where the most was affected, I think, at this point with COVID and whatnot. Those people is where we added, because the previous, before 1 year work, for example, 0 to 1, like 0 to 3 months, 0 to 5 months, that's always been a factor. Like there's always been turnover in that space.
And it's high.
Yeah, it's high. It's very high. Yeah.
I think it's like 50%, I want to say.
I mean, I wouldn't be surprised to see that. Yeah, absolutely. And that's not even counting, like, you know, there's companies like us that work with companies and they're not counting our turnover at their place, you know.
Yeah. So
that I don't think has been it's worse for sure, but I don't think it's drastically worse than it was. But it's really the ones like the 1 to 3 year mark there, that's added to the game of turnover. Like, because,
so there's more turnover.
Well, because we've just witnessed what they called it, the Great Resignation, right? So
yes,
you know, we've just witnessed a market, a work market where if you change jobs, you make more money. Rather than, and that's funny because Gen Z, for example, they're walking into the market in this space where if you quit your job, you make more money if you go somewhere else. That's crazy, man. That's unheard of. That hasn't been the way that things worked. If you look at my parents or like 40 years of service was standard. You know, it's not something
that doesn't exist anymore.
That does not exist anymore.
No.
For many reasons. Like back then, if you were a Bell employee, well, you were just good for Bell.
Yeah.
You didn't know any other systems, and Rogers, you were no good to Rogers because.
And it goes both ways too. Like
Yeah.
there's other, just to if I can add on to this a little comment. So one of my friends, his a friend of a friend, and it goes both ways in the sense that the employer,
For sure.
in many instances, not always, but in many instances, do not appreciate the employees as much as they should. This poor lady, I don't know her personally, but friend of a friend, she had worked at BMO, I think, for 40 years.
Yeah.
It was her last day coming up. Nothing. No thank you.
Right.
No zero appreciation.
Yeah.
And she was really upset.
Yeah, I could see that.
Of course. So she's like, hey, I work here 40 years, my whole life. Like, yes, you guys were good to me, but like nothing. Just like, all right, like, see ya. Don't hit the door on the way out.
Yeah.
She was very, very, very upset.
Well, who takes care of that? You know, who's the one organizing that? Who would do that? Let's say for you, KBD, who would be in charge of taking care of who's going to be?
It's
you know?
not me.
No, that's what I mean. So that's probably what happens.
Yeah.
Is that it's like, well, nobody's in charge of doing that. So usually when it comes down to a party like that, it's about the manager who cares about the person, who wants to make sure that they're recognized for their hard work. And
Yeah.
there's a person organizing that. And then maybe that's what's happening there. But, you know, there's no like, I mean, we have committees, you know, like social club committees and stuff, which I guess that would fall on them. But it's tough to keep track of everything unless someone says, hey,
no, you're not
we
wrong.
got, you know, this person just hit a milestone. We got to take care of that. And that's something we're working on too, man. We miss it too sometimes.
Employee recognition.
For sure, because
it's important.
yeah, man, little milestones, little things that they've hit, little like rite of passages that they've crossed. Like it's important to celebrate those things, you know, to make sure that that's what's big. That's what's changed a lot, I think, before.
I agree.
Before when I started, not that they didn't celebrate, they did for sure, but I think there's a lot of emphasis that was put on that in this market, in this crazy market of retaining talent. We went to the space where we kind of became scared of losing people, so we may have went too far down the line of forgetting about, you know, and this is for myself specifically, but companies in general may have gotten too far down to
the point where you're walking on eggshells.
Yeah, pretty much.
To kind of go, what do you want? What do you want? Okay, we'll get it for you. No problem.
I'll give you whatever you want to stay here.
Please don't leave. Please don't leave.
Well, that's it. But that's a problem because then, you know, so, and it's, you know, and I understand that so again, we're talking about a full generation walking into the job market with this environment.
Yeah.
And so you don't think things are going to change? Oh boy, they're going to change. And that's because, you know, in a couple of years, that's going to be 27% of the work market.
We're talking Gen Z.
Gen Z, for example, they're going to represent 27%. We're going to have to learn how to.
Gen Z is 2000, born 2000 and after. What's Gen Z, Joey?
95 to 2000.
Yeah, something like that. Yeah.
1995 to 2003, roughly.
Yeah. Something like that.
Yeah.
1997, maybe 97. Anyway. 27.
So the correction, Joey. Gen Z is
97 to 2013.
1997 to 2013.
Yes.
Cool. So some of them are 10 years old. And
yeah.
Okay.
So it's coming. 10 years, we're going to have, they said something like 20. I mean, I don't want to state things that are not right, but I think it's something like 27% of the workforce will be Gen Z. And these are people that are coming into a little different than, you know, what the previous generations had walked into, I would say. And so, for example, baby boom, like tenure was important. That's where a lot of like the compensation based on how long you've been there and things like that, like that's important and whatnot, and steadiness. But then with the increase of people going to school, then the skill sets started becoming interchangeable. So you became available and also valuable for different companies. Whereas before there was less education, you'd be just valuable for where you're working, and so they'd keep you and they'd like you and you wouldn't go anywhere. But now it's very different. It's climate, and it's a big different. It's a candidate market. It is not an employer's market. Employers do not have the big stick.
Just this makes me think. What I'm thinking about right now. I heard this really cool stat on the PBD podcast. I heard this yesterday or last week or something.
Yeah.
There's a big poll. Only 16% of Gen Zs, this is for Americans, are happy with their country, are proud to be American. Only 16%. And we're seeing the same thing kind of happen. It's very similar to here in Canada. a lot of people, especially coming out of the education system for whatever reason, are not patriotic. They don't like where they live.
Yeah.
I find it odd. What impact do you think this is going to have on employers? Is this something that, like, I'll tell you right now, if I come up with someone and if someone comes up to me, I'm interviewing you to come work at KBD Insurance, and I sense that someone has that attitude of, I don't like where I live, I think this is wrong. It's a pessimistic attitude. They're not working here.
No,
I'll tell you that in 2 seconds.
But you can't say that too many times. What I mean is, if that's all of the market at one point.
Yeah, this is where I'm going. What the hell are we going to do?
What's going to happen is, I think employers are going to have to get used to the idea that people are going to be here for a year and they're going to do well during the year they're here, or maybe not, but just ensure that they are, and they're going to move on. And I think that's how they're going to have to get used to things. When I was in high school, we were talking about changing. When we were in high school, like the change of the market moving from a full-time to a part-time market, and things are going to be a little different. And then we saw the progression of things. People just stay less in jobs than they used to. Part of it financially, part of it because maybe they just want to try something else, and loyalty is not the biggest. Their loyalty is different. It's somewhere else.
Again,
I
think
they don't have loyalty.
Yeah.
They just don't have it towards their employer.
And I think it's...
Sorry, can you just bring your mic in a little bit?
Yeah.
Put your mic closer to you, Mitch.
Yeah, there we go. It's better?
Yeah.
I think it just adds on to that. It's kind of similar to the conversation that we were having earlier on here, where it's basically why... what the hell was the conversation we were having at the beginning? I was just about to say something. I completely forgot what the fuck I was about to say.
The Gen Z conversation?
No, the first conversation we had today.
My God.
The job market, the lack of jobs.
Yes. Okay.
Lack of jobs.
So the fact, the lack of jobs. So it's like how
No,
it's
there's too
kind
many
of
jobs.
multifactorial. So
Yes,
it could
yes,
be,
yes,
is it the
yes,
baby boomers? Is it the fact
So
that,
many things.
yeah, there's many, many, many factors. And I think it's kind of like the same thing right now. There's just like, there's always so many factors to kind of go into all that.
I think it's just a question of learning how to work with them. Just like we were a problem to the baby boomers, like it's just like they had the same narrative of like.
But I think now like
every
there
generation is like that.
Yeah, and there's multiple reasons why people stay less at companies. I think another big reason is you can make money online.
Well, that's true.
You know
that's
what I mean?
true.
Like
yes.
if you start blowing up on TikTok or Instagram, you're
good.
a micro influencer, you start drop shipping. Yeah, OnlyFans, it's a real thing.
Seriously though, that's the biggest one. I mean you can stay home and make more money than I'll ever dream of.
Like if you're a smoking hot girl and or guy, it's typically speaking more women most of the time. But it's like if you want to make a bunch of money doing that, you can do that too. Do you think? Here was my next question. This is where I was going with this. It's like, yes, there's definitely the retention is less for employees working at companies. Do you also think that the fact that a lot of people are working from home, do you think that also plays into it? And the reason why I asked that question is my opinion, and this is, again, I'm one of those people that I like for people to be in the office more than they're not. Because there's more of that connection. And if you're always working remotely and you never get to fully meet the people you work with and integrate with them and kind of, just be a human with them, I feel like the job just becomes transactional and they're not as attached to the company. So for example, this has happened all the time during COVID. Yeah. You had people who got hired at a job and it took them 2 years to meet the people in person.
For sure.
That's crazy. Think about that. For 2 years, you're working for a company, getting paid. You never met the people.
Never met them. You know what's even crazier? I had people in sales jobs that never met clients in person, that never went on a face-to-face meeting. That's not their fault.
No, I'm not saying it is. I'm not saying it is.
Crazy.
But it's just crazy.
Yeah. And I'm a big advocate of also creating culture. Listen, I think that the new way of doing things is that, I like to say that it's a kind of like, it's not a right to work from home. It's a benefit because you're doing a good job and you can, you're independent. We trust you and you can go and work from home. That's fine, or from anywhere for all I care. But it's not a right. It's not something that comes with.
It's a privilege.
It's a privilege. That's the word I was looking for. Yeah.
C'est un privilège.
C'est un privilège. C'est un privilège. And I think that my opinion on that is I see the productivity levels based on being at home and being at work.
Here we go. Yeah, let's get into this.
I just
you said this the other day on Fridays, for example.
Oh, yeah.
I'll let you take it from here. Talk to me, baby. Talk to me.
Yeah. So, I mean, like, as much as people will say they're more productive at home, I think that that's just their opinion of it. But that's not, I mean, and it's maybe not everybody, but
I agree.
I'm looking at the averages. I'm not looking overall. But it's just, there's a lot less being done on Fridays
and the numbers
at home than on a Monday in the office, for example. So call it what you want. It's just,
So let me ask you this. Since you have implemented, how many people work from home on your team?
Okay, so we are on a hybrid model.
Got it.
So we work from home twice a week. And
on the days where people are not in the office.
Yeah.
Do the numbers clearly suggest that the productivity is less on the days where they work from home? Is that the case?
Yeah, I think so, unfortunately, because I love working from home. I love having the hybrid model, and I think that, like, and that's something that it's a narrative that I'm talking to with my team is, let's not mess this up. Like we got like, I never knew what working from home. I didn't know that I would ever work from home. My wife works from home, and I was so jealous at the time. Like, I didn't think that I would ever work from home.
And you like it?
Well, I like it. I like the mix. I missed the office during COVID. I'm a people guy. I like to talk. I'm not an email person at all. If you need something from me, call me on my cell.
You're gonna pick up the phone.
I'll pick the phone up any day, anytime, anywhere. It could be a Sunday, Saturday. It doesn't matter, which is not great, but whatever. I love that. I love the human interaction, which went away completely.
I agree.
And so I love that. But I liked the mix. I like the fact that some days
Are you back in the office 100% right now?
No, I go to the office 3 days, 4 days a week, let's say. And then, but I got to see my daughter grow up, which most dads and some parents don't get the privilege of seeing. And that's because of the privilege I had to be home. There's days where I could spend days with my daughter, which I would have never been able to do. I mean, I would barely see my daughter if I had the same schedule as I used to. She goes to bed that's another thing too, working parents, funny. I never realized why I would get emails at like 8 p.m. at night sometimes, and I'd be like, what are they doing, man? Just close the computer.
Yeah.
But it's because, and maybe that's not for everybody, but for me, when my daughter comes home from daycare at 4:30, I got to be dad till like 7. Then she goes to bed. Then I'm good. So I can pick up back work, and I'm cool with it because I just had 3 hours with my daughter, and Are
you able to be fully present with her when most of the time, or is work still kind of in the background sometimes?
In the background,
it's always there.
It's just, but I think that's just how my mind works. I have a hard time with it. I had a hard time adapting with working from home, by the way. It's not as easy as it looks. I didn't know when to take a break.
I've never worked from home.
I didn't know when to stop work. Yeah. I didn't know when to take a break. I didn't know, like, I would go full days without eating, man. My wife would have to be like, hey, you got to take a break, man. And it's just because I didn't know. I wasn't used to it. Like at 7 o'clock at night, like my computer's just right over there. There's nothing to do. I could just pop it in. Because you can infinitely do work. There's always things to get done. So being respectful of your own time was important. Like I had to book time in my calendar for like, this is just not doing anything, but you got to go for a walk or something. Because I found myself going from the computer to the couch to the bed to the computer to the couch to the bed. And it became unhealthy,
Yeah, of course.
After a while.
Of course.
But you're thinking when this thing started, like, okay, I got a couple months of this and then I got to go back to work normally. And it's really lasted longer than we thought. So anyway, but that's the one thing too with working parents and adapting your schedules and making sure that I think we do a better job of that than our parents did.
I would agree.
You
know what I was just thinking about? I don't know why it just popped into my head.
What?
I always have a million things popping into my head. Mitchapalooza.
Oh, yeah. Well, man, I would pay a lot of money to go back to those days,
Yeah, for those of you that don't know, Mitchapalooza. So Mitch used to just, we'll put it this way. The parties that Mitch, and they were such a great dynamic because we had, I guess we'll say like my group of friends or network, and then we
Yeah.
had your group of friends, like the Charlemagne guys,
Yeah.
and we had us, we'll call us the John Abbott guys.
Yeah.
And,
Just a clash
you know,
of
because,
people.
well, sometimes, because you might get two different networks of, you know, boys when you're 18, 19 years old. It either works really well or it doesn't work
Yeah,
at
yeah,
all. And if it
exactly.
doesn't work, you fight.
Yes.
Yeah.
No fights.
Yeah,
Never.
no fights. The chemistry was just, like,
Great. Yeah.
perfect.
Yeah. It was a
And
good
whenever we
time.
go to the parties, and there's just such a great chemistry between the two
It was
crews.
a great time.
Yeah.
Yeah. I agree.
Yeah.
I agree. Those were good days.
Yeah.
Really fun.
It
I'd
was.
go back.
Yeah.
I
would
mean-
I'm very happy
I'm
with
very happy too.
I like
don't
doing
get me
this
wrong.
too,
Yeah,
but-
yeah.
All right, I'm going to pull up my phone, and I'm going to ask you what I think is going to be the next most important question. I don't know if I have any other questions here. We got this. Nah, it's kind of boring. Boring. I should have just asked ChatGPT. Anything you want to talk about in particular?
Oh,
Like, I was going to ask for, like, what are some tips you can give to people like this? But
well,
it's like, kinda,
tips
I-
like
I think you gave enough, man. I think
Yeah.
just, hey, if you go into an interview, be honest.
yeah, be honest.
Don't-
and just be yourself.
be
and
transparent.
Don't be someone else in that meeting, and then inform yourself on where you're going. First of all, that's also very important. I think the first step would be inform yourself on who you're meeting with, what the company does. Those are basic things, right? Obviously, and then
Yeah.
there's a lot of good YouTube videos that you can watch how to prepare for an interview and what. Actually, I did that for my interview at Aerotek 10 years
Interesting.
ago. There's a lot of good things you can look at and whatnot, but you know, it's not a trick. The thing is that people look at interviews as an exam, and it's not really that. It's yes, it is, but it's also for you to evaluate them and them to evaluate you, and just not. But not in an exam way. It's just be yourselves.
Conversation.
Yeah, conversational.
That's right. Whenever I interview someone, funny enough, they go, okay, what are the questions? I go, it's very, obviously, mind you, I've conducted
Many.
40 interviews.
Yeah,
so
yeah,
it's, I'm coming from a different place.
Yeah.
But it's very, very, very conversational. Because
Yes.
I'm seeing exactly what you said earlier on. I already have a very good idea of what your skill set is. I'm
Yeah.
trying to see what type of person you
Yeah.
are, if I'm going to like you, and if you're going to fit into the culture of the office.
That's right.
That's what I'm looking for.
That's the best and most important thing. And yeah, so I think, you know, it's not a difficult thing. It's just if you're being yourself, that sometimes can be difficult though in a stressful setting. So,
But that's also too, there's a little bit of and I'm sure you've done the same thing. That's, I find, on the person conducting the interview.
Yes,
So if I can
100%.
see someone who's a little bit nervous,
Yeah.
number one, I don't mind at all because it means they care.
yes,
That's the first part.
Yeah.
And I will notice that right away, and I'll try and diffuse them.
yes.
Like,
Then
not
you're
go,
doing the
hey,
right
you, I'll never go,
You're nervous?
hey man, you look really nervous, so don't worry about that.
Why are you sweating?
Yeah. I won't say that. I'll try and,
Yeah.
but I'll notice it, try and get them to calm down, ask
Yeah.
a few questions that have nothing to do with anything about the job.
Right.
See what they're like. And then generally speaking, that'll usually help. And then I can start asking the questions. You got to massage them
Yeah.
a little bit first, massage the situation.
Yes. I think that's the best way to interview
Yeah.
somebody.
And
especially-
you're very good at that too.
Yeah. Well, I think that I learned a lot of it throughout my career for sure. I didn't recruit very long, by the way. So, I mean, I'm in the world of it, and I help a lot of the, a lot of the strategy in there. I'm involved with some of that stuff. But really, the business development aspect is what I'm focused on. That's the
Interesting.
most important thing.
Yeah, that's important in any business.
Yes.
Business development, man.
Yes,
If there's
yes,
no
yes,
business
yes.
development, you're probably not going to have a business.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah.
I don't really have anything else to ask. I think we kind of covered a bunch of stuff. How long have we been going? I always ask Joey, how long have we been going at this for?
About an hour 40.
Oh, that's hour 40.
Is that good?
For me, that's the sweet spot.
That's good.
Typically speaking, we've been getting anywhere from, the first one was an hour 15, but I didn't really know what I was doing. It was a little choppier. We're usually between an hour and a half and an hour and 50. So
I'm on the top end.
you're right in the sweet spot.
Sweet
Mitch.
spot.
You're right in the sweet
That's
spot.
good, man.
Yeah.
Joey's giving me the nod, so we're good.
Yeah, Joey's like, yeah,
Yeah,
we're
yeah,
done.
so we're
done.
good.
We're
Yeah,
done.
yeah.
But Mitch, thank you very, very, very
was a
much.
pleasure, man.
Once again, this is Mitch of Aerotek. He works in recruiting, not headhunting. I didn't know that. Works in recruiting. Staffing, we can say.
It's general.
If you guys enjoyed the episode, feel free to subscribe. Feel free to like it. Feel free to share it with one of your friends. Freemium Podcast. We're on YouTube. We're on Facebook. We're on Instagram. We're on TikTok. We're everywhere and all that kind of stuff. So once again, thank you so much, Mitch. And
it's been a pleasure, man. This is a great experience.
We're going to go play some virtual golf now.
All right, can't wait.
We're going to gamble, and we're going to most likely have a couple of beverages. It's going to be a good time. So
yeah, I'm looking forward to it. Thanks a lot, man.
Thank you.
Thank you, guys.